Have you ever gone whitewater rafting? There is nothing like jumping in that ice-cold water with a raft full of people and paddling to your guide's directions when they shout out, left side, right side, as you navigate through the rapids. And after, you can just sit back and relax, maybe tell a couple of jokes, and just enjoy nature. It is not the worst way to spend a summer day. But sometimes those raft rides can go out of control. People get tossed around and things go flying everywhere. The raft will speed down the river, and you can lose all sense of where you are and where you're going. And for some of us, the future can feel like one of those raft journeys, the second, terrifying kind. I used to be a raft guide during the summers growing up, and it was a cool job. I spent my days on the river and my nights living in this old school bus. Now, it wasn't exactly a career track job, but what it lacked in pay, it more than made up for in smiles and sunshine. But after a couple of seasons, I knew I needed to find a job with more transferable skills, and so I thought to myself, raft guide supervisor. No, what I did end up doing, though, was to become an entrepreneur. And along the way, I founded several companies and have since then gone on to become an innovation consultant. And in my career, I get an opportunity to work with some of the world's largest companies. And now I'm doing my doctoral research here at NC State on how they and the rest of us innovate and think about the future. So how are we feeling about the future? Well, remember that raft ride from hell from a few seconds ago? It's like that. For a lot of us, I can sum it up in 3 words. We are screwed. And it's not surprising that people feel like we're on this runaway raft. Just look at all these massive problems we're facing today. I mean, whether it's global warming or mass extinction, fake news or failing democracies, it seems like the list just goes on and on. The world feels like it's spinning out of control, and somehow we've lost our ability to effect control on it. Just last year, in the largest study of its kind to date, Bath University interviewed 10,000 people under the age of 25, and they asked them how they feel about the future. And this is what they had to say. 3/4 of them said that they felt frightened by the future. And 60% said they felt either very or extremely worried. And over half, 56%, said that they thought that humanity is doomed. Humanity is doomed? How can you hope to become a productive member of society or contribute in making the world a better place when you feel like you're doomed? Doomed as in the worst is destined to happen, and we've just resigned ourselves to that fate. Doomed is a powerless place. Okay, in addition to that pause, that information is a lot for me to take in. But we can't engage in a problem if we're paralyzed by the fear of it. So tonight, let's jump into the water and put on our life jackets. And let's talk about that river that is the future, and what it is and how we actually make it. Let's talk about how things are now and how we can make them better. Because the future is what we make it to be. It's society and the decisions we're making today that will determine the world we live in tomorrow. And how do we change the future? We change it by innovating. Innovation is society in the making. We hear about innovation so much, it feels like a buzzword or a cliche. I mean, just jump onto Google and type innovative way to, and see all the stuff you get back. It turns out there's an innovative way to get a new job and an innovative way to get a new girlfriend. There are innovative ways to fold your laundry and innovative ways to walk your dog. But it's not that kind of personal innovation we need to talk about. The kind we need to talk about has a complex name: techno-economic innovation. And it's what happens when we take novel ideas and pair them with market capital to build the kinds of products and services we use to change the way we all live. That's the kind of innovation we need to talk about tonight. So let's get in and talk about it. Innovation reflects the way we do business, which was established over 150 years ago during the Industrial Revolution. It's an intentionally designed system meant to solve very specific problems. So what was it designed to do? Well, increase worker productivity. And through the Industrial Revolution, and with the rise of mass production and globalization, it's done exactly that. Today, we're able to build more stuff and produce more things. And in fact, everything we have in this room right now is a reflection of that increased productivity. And I think most of us would agree that that, by and large, is a good thing. But despite all these changes over the years, This old school system that's focused on producing output is still the way we work today. And we can see that in the kind of corporate worlds that most of us end up working in. They are just filled with bureaucracy. Decisions start up top and they come down, and it leaves people who feel like they're cogs in a machine, and where the jobs they do and the work they do every day doesn't really matter, at least not in the big picture. Okay, so that's the corporate world, but what about startups? You might be thinking, Chris, these startups, they're young, they're smaller, they're more agile and dynamic, they must be making waves and coming up with new ways of working. Well, not quite. Now, of course, there are some startups that have found new ways to work, but by and large, research shows they're still traditionally organized. And even then, best case, only 13% of us get to work in these startups, where maybe 2 to 5% of those people are in positions to make decisions. So no matter what kind of company we work for, we're all stuck in this old system where we've handed the paddle of innovation over to maybe 1% of the people. And so it's no surprise the other 99% feel like we don't have much control. It's because we don't. Okay, so the system of innovation we have is out of control. We've lost control of it. So what are we going to do? Well, we need to redesign how it works. And we can do that with just a couple of updates. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Update 1. Let's think about innovation as a right. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go and rewrite the Constitution, but what if innovation were something we were all entitled and encouraged to do? And let's think about that for a second to seriously consider how it would change the world if innovation were actually a part of the way we all daily worked. Here are just a couple examples to help us get started. If innovation were a right, we could finally dispense with the all-hands meeting. You know, the meeting where the boss comes in and shares the big picture? And while we're in the meeting, we all nod our heads and agree, and then after we huddle up outside and talk about how we really think? Instead, maybe we could have an all-minds meeting that encourage candid conversation, where people can share their views without having to worry about office politics, who's the boss of who, or fear of personal repercussions. If innovation were a right, companies would create safe space for people to think differently. And sure, some of those different ideas would turn out to be wrong, but the best ideas would win or lose on merit through a process of experimentation and evidence rather than by status or power. Breakthrough ideas happen when you take different kinds of knowledge and can combine them in new and novel ways. Think data science with art or bioengineering with psychology. If innovation were a right, then we would shift our attention to lifelong learning that actually valued having a broad set of skills, backgrounds, and know-how, and put that as a priority instead of dismissing it. Innovation as a right would mean that for each of us in our jobs, part of our time would be reserved for us and our own ideas. And we know that when employees can contribute their ideas to their job, their satisfaction goes way up. And not just in their jobs, in their entire lives. Innovation as a guaranteed right in this world would be a pretty cool thing. But it's not going to happen if we keep working how we work now. Organizations need to change, and that gets us to update number 2. We need to reshape the way we have the org chart. Now, we all know the shape of most organizations today, right? It's a triangle, where there's a couple people up top that make most of the big choices, and then everyone in the middle and the bottom kind of get lost. And that triangle shape points out one of its own problems. It has a top and a middle and a bottom. We need to move organizations toward a new shape that looks something more like a sphere. Where's the top of a sphere? Where's the bottom of it? In a structure like that, people and their ideas and creativity could flow more freely instead of getting concentrated at just one point. Okay, so to set the table for update 3, I want to tell a story about how Innovation 1.0 came up short for me and my own company. In 2012, I was a CEO of a social media publishing company, and we had about 150 million users in more than 50 countries around the world. And in one of those countries, we started to see explosive growth. And we got really interested about what was going on with that, so we decided to dig into it. But what we found was that people were using our product in a way that we had never expected, much less intended. They were using it to exploit women who were trapped in the sex trade. Now, I can tell you, everyone on my team had the best intentions, and we all wanted to make the kind of product that would positively contribute to the world, and still this terrible thing happened. And this experience points out an important fact about innovation. There are always unintended consequences. Even when you have good people with the best intentions, history has proven that unintended consequences are inseparable from technology innovation. So when these unintended consequences happen, does the system we have today have a good way to handle it? No. There's no moral compass to innovation. Now, our company chose to cut off that toxic traffic, but we all know that we could have just as easily viewed that as positive growth. It's like the paddle that doesn't know or care it's steering the raft down a dangerous path. The system of innovation we have now today is really only good as the morality of the people we allow to use it. And that gets us to update number 3. We need to innovate as if people matter. When unintended consequences are unavoidable, and when ideas have no base moral system, we need to choose to care just as much about the purposes behind a technology as the technology itself. Okay, let's recap. So we've got a system now where hardly anybody gets to participate in, and it has tremendous consequences when you get something wrong. And inevitably, you will get something wrong. And these 3 things are coming together to create this situation, this feeling we have of floating down a runaway raft that's headed towards rapids that we can see. And by the way, we can all see the rapids, but we as individuals don't have a paddle or a way to steer ourselves around it. Now, maybe the 1% that do have the paddle can, but do we trust them to do it? Should we trust them to do it? The question really is, what are we going to do about this? Well, fortunately for us, we live in a time where it's a knowledge economy, and that means that our ideas and our creativity are quickly becoming the most important resources companies have for our success. And that means that we all have unprecedented levels of personal power, and I think it's time we use it. If you're on a team, don't allow your ideas or values to get checked at the door, and you assume someone else is going to do the right thing and fight for what's right. If you're a manager, prioritize making sense about problems before jumping into their solutions. And if you're an executive, foster your own comfort with doubt and make sure that your corporate culture is the kind that doesn't just encourage, it demands and expects dissenting ideas. There are just as many bright possibilities ahead of us as dark ones. In a powerless place, we're victims. And we might be doomed to fate and circumstance. But from a place of power, we can become a community of co-creators. Now, changes at this scale take commitment from all of us demanding more. But together we can create new ways to work. I mean, after all, people design the system we have now. We can definitely design a new one that ensures each of us gets a paddle, and we can all be contributors in making a more constructive future. The kind of future that puts human beings first.